Hello, everybody, and welcome to Music Industry Insights Worldwide. And today we've got the awesome Mark Walmsley with us. Hi, Mark. How are you?
It's great to see you again. Thank you so much for inviting me to join you for this and for all the great work that you're doing.
Oh, thank you so much. Do you want to tell the listeners a little bit more about yourself, where you're from, and what you do?
Yes, I live in Hulbridge on Crouch, which is a sleepy riverside village 40 miles east of London in Essex in the UK. I'm a musician by training, but I've been through brand and marketing consulting, event management, party organizing, medtech and biotech marketing. I had a web design agency for many years, and I now run the Arts and Culture Network.
Fantastic. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the Arts and Culture Network and what that does?
Sure. It was an accident, really. I started the group as for fun, as a hobby in 2010 on LinkedIn, and it grew on its own. And we now have 143,000 members across 8 arts and culture LinkedIn groups around the world, with something like 200 people applying to join the group every day at the moment, which is wonderful. Our motto is choose people who will say your name in a room full of opportunities.
I love that one, Mark. I love that. And that's how we met, isn't it? Through the networking events that you run.
Yeah, it is. And thank you for being one of our members. It's very much appreciated.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and networking is so super important these days. So thank you for promoting us as well as individuals and also the arts and culture, because it's extremely important in the UK, I think. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Yeah, our sector is the best place to save the world.
I hope so. I hope so. I think I'm in the right place. So do you want to tell us a little bit more about how long you've been doing the Arts and Culture Network for?
Yeah, so it was a hobby really from 2010 to the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
And when we all faced the isolation that required, I realized that people hadn't met really in our group. So I started hosting a series of networking events that you've been to, just to give people a chance to reduce the sense of isolation, make connections, start new conversations, and explore opportunities for international cooperation. And it's working. We've had some lovely success stories of people who've been on our meetings. So yeah, and we're right across the spectrum of the arts: performing arts, literary arts, visual arts, GLAM, which is galleries, libraries, archives, and museums, and a whole raft of people who support artists as well. So it's a nice balance. We're about 30% Americas, 30% Europe and Scandinavia, 30% everywhere else.
I've
So
met some great friends as well off the network. So I always keep in touch, and I've had a few on the podcast as well. So we really appreciate your work, Mark. It's been fantastic. And it really does.
it's a pleasure. My superpower seems to be connecting people, and my passion is music, arts, and culture. So I'm in the best possible job.
That's great. And how does the Arts and Culture Network promote diversity and inclusion across its community pages and its LinkedIn page?
It's a primary tenet of our existence. My sense is that the traditional institutions of belonging are failing us all over the world. Political parties, religious organizations, and nations very protective about their borders are probably responsible for most of the unpleasantness and conflict around the world at any given time. Yet we still have this yearning for belonging and being in a community of bright and like-minded people, regardless of our cultural background. So we're determinedly borderless, inclusive, and diverse. And we don't have any affiliations with any nations, political parties, organizations, religions, or sponsors or advertisers. So we're entirely able to be open,
Yeah.
and decidedly so.
And you also run a podcast, don't you? Tell us a little bit more about the podcast you run, Mark.
Well, that was started recently because one of the things that we do for our members when they join as full members is to interview them.
Yeah.
We write a profile about them. We then embed the interview on a profile on our website. We capture the audio, and the audio goes on SoundCloud and on our new Spotify podcast to help those members over a number of areas really: raise their profile, grow their own network, progress their careers if they're new to the industry, and promote their work and or their business as well. So those are all highly search optimized, so that in fact in some cases, if you search for one of our members, their profile on our page, our website, will come up more prominently at Google than their own website. So it's the podcast is just one of those outlets really for that. It's not so easy doing a podcast with visual artists, but with Spotify you can use the video of the interview as the podcast, so it can be watched either as a video or in audio.
That's what I do both, actually, to make it more accessible for everybody. I think both my parents are deaf, actually, so I understand that some people can watch things and some people can listen to things, but some people can't do both. So I try and cater.
Yeah, it's also very funny when you see the subtitles. Sometimes when you're in our industry, the phrases and words that we use are not instantly recognized. So you do see some strange interpretations in the subtitles as well.
And you also do a lot of speed networking, and a lot of your kind of meetups are speed networking events. How do you think that kind of promotes diversity, inclusion, and also people to get to know each other?
It's very good at doing both. I use all the Fs. It's fast, fun, friendly, and fiendishly effective.
Yeah.
Because on one of our meetings are only an hour long. We do have an after party, but they're normally just an hour. And in that time, all of our guests can meet 6 or 7 other members at random.
Yeah.
So randomization is the element of inclusivity and diversity, because you just don't know who you're going to meet. So you could have somebody who runs a street dance group in Uganda meeting somebody who runs an opera center in New York. And quite often it's not the one you expect who learns the most. I've had feedback from really quite senior arts and culture professionals saying, I've just met somebody who's new to this industry, working in a different country, and I learned more from her than she did from me. So that's that it's built in, which I love. And it helps those emerging professionals to spend 5 minutes with somebody who's made it. On one occasion, at one of our meetings, we had a breakout room, and in there were 3 ladies. The first was thinking of making the leap of faith out of corporate life into creative life. The second had done so a few months ago, and the third had done so 16 years ago. Wow. So they were able to share their experiences and their concerns in a kind of like a mastermind session. So yeah, the promotion, self-promotion, and diversity and inclusivity are all built into that. You know, we have a give as gain approach in those meetings. Don't try and think what you can get out of it. Try and think how you can help.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And I think that's part of what I really got from this. And you do a lot of the international collaborations and exchanges, which I love and I find extremely useful, because sometimes you can't always afford to go to a country or afford to, you know, specifically be in one place, but you can connect with people sat in your kitchen or your front room or wherever you are from different countries. So that I think is extremely beneficial, actually.
Yeah, and we've had some of our members get up at 3 or 4 a.m. to join a meeting in a different time zone, which is great. Bless them.
Yeah, and what kind of initiatives and partnerships does the ACN run and pursue to support cultural exchange?
It's really the networking events and the LinkedIn groups, because both are globally accessible, as you point out. One of the things we try and do as part of the matchmaking service is to match people with other full members. So when somebody joins as a full member, we do a 30-minute matchmaking session with them where we whittle down the 143,000 into between 50 and 100 people. And those, excuse me, those sessions, sometimes somebody in London will say, I need to reach out to gallery owners in New York, for example. So it's kind of international collaboration is built in that way.
Yeah, and we do a lot of talk around social and cultural issues in the arts. How do you think that's reflected across your LinkedIn page and obviously your community? Because I know you do have a lot of that.
Yeah, it's the success stories that I hear about, that where people have from different backgrounds, people from different cultures and different continents
Mhm.
are finding a way of working together. So a couple of years ago, I heard that three digital artists from three different continents had collaborated on a digital show. And so that's quite common, hearing about those. I don't get to hear all of the success stories. I probably hear a fraction of them.
Yeah.
And it's always a delight when I hear, oh, I've just met so and so and we're working together and we met on one of your meetings. So that kind of sense of it being a social purpose and having a broader support mechanism than just the art
Mhm.
is part of that. For example, one of our members pointed out to me that another of the members had recently moved from South Africa to Canada,
Mhm.
and she was a very, very talented young arts marketer. Um, by moving from South Africa to Canada, she effectively negated her health insurance,
Um,
and with a 5-year-old son in tow, found out that she had a rare form of breast cancer. Um, we were able to donate some of our membership revenue to her fundraiser, which and I wouldn't have heard about that if somebody hadn't have pointed it out. She was able to acquire medication that otherwise she wouldn't have been able to acquire. And I spoke to her recently, and she's doing really well.
Often.
Now, a grant funding body wouldn't have helped in those circumstances. So it's really important that that as a mutually supportive community, we're aware that some of the things you need help with as an artist or a musician or an actor are life-based rather than art-based, but they're essential. So we don't have any restriction in that respect.
Okay, Mark, and if you want to become a full member to the Arts and Culture Network, how can you do that and how much does it cost? What kind of benefits do you get from that?
Thank you. This is the pitch. We're entirely member funded. So everything that we do that's free to all is funded by our full members. We have around 250 full members. It's £10 per month, or €12 or $12 per month. Cancel any time. Or it's £100 a year,
Okay.
which is a saving on that. And that provides several benefits. Four mainly. The first is the interview that we record and publish and promote. We do that by posting it to the LinkedIn groups until they've had over 1,000 impressions. Those are great fun because in the interview I create our full members' fantasy cultural year from the answers to 10 easy questions. It's a lovely way of pulling out anecdotes, surprises, conversational detours.
Yeah.
We also play the this or that game. So tea or coffee, shower or bath, that kind of that. And that's a real nice icebreaker. And so that's the first thing. And we re-promote that periodically and then re-record them annually. We also create a gallery and can embed videos for artists into that profile page. And the second benefit is the matchmaking session, where I sit down and find 50 to 100 fellow members who look like really useful connections for that member. And I send them to that as a Word file, and they can then work their way through connecting and say, hi, we both know Mark and we're in the Arts and Culture Network group. I'd love to connect. And they do. And then as a first connection, then you can send a message to them saying, thank you so much for connecting. I'd love to pick your brains for 15 minutes on Zoom if you could spare the time. And that's working really well. The fourth benefit is nomination as a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, with whom we're associated. And that's heavily discounted and fast-tracked. And then those members can become fellows of the Royal Society of Arts and engage in that society as well, for an amount, the saving of which is equivalent to the membership of the Arts and Culture Network. So that's a bit of a no-brainer. And they can pop FRSA after their name if they wish. So,
And you do a meetup in person as well, don't you, Mark, once a month down at the
we
art.
do, yes. So and that's at the Royal Society of Arts in central London. Those are great fun. You often hear people saying, oh, aren't you tall? because we've only seen this much of each other so far. They're great fun. We had one last Friday. 22 people came between 1 and 4 o'clock. There's a lovely cafe there, some lovely spaces, and it's lovely to be able to meet people in person as well. The last benefit is brand and marketing advice. That's my background as well as music. So for those members who need a bit of help capturing what makes them special, I can help with that.
Brilliant. That sounds amazing. And like I said before, what I found about the Arts and Culture Network is it's a really tight-knit community, and it's a really caring and supportive environment, which is why I always come back. And I must become a member when I can get the money together. But, you know, there's been a few challenges along the way, but I'm trying my best, but I will definitely make it soon.
Oh, that would be great. Yeah, I'm pleased with the way it's developing, and it is a mutually supportive community. And we got an award actually from LinkedIn for having one of the most engaged groups on the platform. So yeah, it all seems to be working. And I only have to look at the success stories and realize those wouldn't have happened if I hadn't started this, and that makes it all worthwhile.
Exactly, and we all really appreciate, like I said before, and you do you do different networking events as well. So do you want to go through which different ones you do? So you do UK-based one, and then you do
Yeah, they're typically on a Thursday. So the first Thursday of the month is lunchtime in Europe. So that's 1 p.m. In London. The second Thursday is tea time in Asia Pacific. So that's around 6 p.m. Sydney time. And then the third one is global. So that's 10 a.m. Los Angeles, 1 p.m. New York, 6 p.m. London, 9 p.m. Dubai on Zoom. And that's the third Thursday of the month. And then we have the in-person event on the last Friday afternoon of every month for those who can get to London. And between those, I do taster sessions. They're just 30-minute calls, 6 p.m. London time on a Tuesday, for those who just want to experiment and learn a little bit more, meet a few other members. We had one on Tuesday, and we had, I think, 12 on that one. They're rather more intimate, but they're really designed for people who are curious about what we're doing, want to introduce themselves to a few people and learn a little bit more about the benefits of full membership.
Fantastic. Do you want to share some examples of how you kind of amplify marginalized voices across the Music and Arts Network?
Yes, the wonderful thing about LinkedIn and Zoom is that it's a level playing field.
Yeah.
I can't think how I would have been able to engage with marginalized or silent voices to the extent that we have without using social media, and specifically LinkedIn. And the events are all free.
Okay.
So if you've got somebody who's sitting in who is in a marginalized community, or in a country where £10 a month is unachievable even, and that's entirely understood, there is absolutely no reason or barrier for those people to join our Zoom groups, provided they can get on an internet connection. They can join the groups, so it's accessible to all in that respect. And we have several guests at our events and members in our LinkedIn group who are benefiting from the exposure that those resources provide, that would be unachievable financially any other way.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that I love about it too. You're very supportive, very, very supportive. And what's your thoughts and feelings at the moment around equality, diversity, and inclusion in the arts and culture at the moment in the UK?
It's a cross between worthy approaches and box ticking.
Definitely.
I'm the chair of a cultural charity in Chelmsford in Essex, and I know from past experience that ironically, some of those requirements for funding that relate to EDI are having a counter effect, in that it's assumed that your funding application, for example, will have to include examples of you demonstrating a respect for EDI. I'm afraid it's a little bit like the when political correctness is a tick in a box, in my experience, it can diminish the value of the very thing itself.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
And needless, most right-minded people realize that equity is important and diversity is important and inclusivity is important. We don't necessarily need to be ticking boxes, because that sometimes diminishes the organization's respect for those values. And so I'm always pleased when I see examples of that happening in real life. For example, in Basildon near us, not the centre of the artistic world by any means, a somewhat deprived area of Essex. There was a project recently where two fantastic arts advocates created a program where international muralists would work with communities in Basildon that were underheard and disrespected in many situations. And they put those muralists with those communities together to produce artworks that would appear around the city. And one of those, and it's one of my favorites, a New York-based muralist was linked up with the traveller community in Basildon, and they worked together to find out what their values were. And it turns out that the traveller community have a huge love and respect for their horses.
Yes, they do.
And so the work that appeared on the side of a huge garage was two young boys looking after a horse, and it's now on one of the stop-offs on a tour of the art in the town, communicating and softening the relationships as it does it. And art couldn't do, and nothing else does it quite like that. And it's a permanent reminder. And in fact, when they threatened to whitewash them all out and start again, there was uproar because people had fallen in love with these murals that meant something to them, because they'd worked with disabled children, they'd worked with people with early onset dementia, they'd worked with the traveller community, and they had meaning, real meaning. And that's been inspiring for me.
I come from Oxford, and we've got a massive traveller community there, because obviously I moved to London now, but being in Oxford and understanding how travellers have actually been treated for a long, long time, and they're still quite segregated and isolated as well. So it's so lovely to hear that you're engaging all parts of society in the work that you do and trying to uplift communities at the same time. That's awesome work. Well done.
Well, thank you. I heard a saying once: difference breeds suspicion. Suspicion breeds fear. Fear breeds hatred, and hatred breeds violence. And if you can just nip it in the bud at difference, you can avoid all of that subsequent unpleasantness. And so one of the things I'm very keen about is embracing difference and celebrating it across our community, especially with young people, because nobody is born prejudiced. It's a learned trait in many ways. And so the earlier one can get in there and allow people to accept the fact that we're all different, embrace the fact that we're all different, and celebrate the fact that we're all different, so that we can have those cultural mixes and those cultural exchanges. There is a photograph that I have and I look at just to remind me that it's a picture of a young white woman on a train in New York City with a white baby on her lap, looking back away. And opposite her is an elderly black gentleman, and the child and the elderly black gentleman are holding hands. And the white woman is oblivious to that. It was a stark reminder that she wasn't interested in him, but her one-year-old baby was. And so that's the key. So we actively support anyone who's working with young people in those circumstances to try and use the arts and culture to get that message over, because a child dances before she walks, she draws before she writes, and she sings before she talks. And at some point at that stage in a child's development, they're being taught that being different is bad. And we just need to teach people that different is good.
I think so. I'm born from a multiracial family, so I love that story. I was just going to say to you, like, looking at what we're doing at the moment, what would you like to see improve in the next few years across the arts and culture in the UK?
Oh, wow.
One.
Um, how long have you got? I think I believe there's a review of the way that the arts are funded
Mhm.
in at the moment by the Arts Council.
Yeah.
Um, and I think we need to make it easier for people to apply, certainly for funding the projects that they're doing. In my experience, the people who are doing the most exciting work um, need need that support the most are the least well equipped to apply for it.
Yeah.
So that needs to be easier. Our legacy is to give our membership revenue away without any application form. That's what we intend to do.
Yeah.
Uh, I think early years, anything that is arts and culture related for early years that has at its heart a celebration of people being different and I think celebrating difference is kind of it has EDI in it.
Mhm.
Okay, if you're celebrating the fact that we're all a bit different, you are equitable, you are being diverse, and you are being inclusive, because that's the logical next step. In some ways, difference is further upstream.
Yeah.
A respect and an acceptance of people being different
Yeah.
is further upstream than its application in EDI. So whilst we're teaching people to embrace EDI as concepts, actually we're missing the trick. Why are we, there's a lovely saying, somebody who buys a 1/4-inch drill doesn't want a 1/4-inch drill. What they want is a 1/4-inch hole.
Yeah.
And EDI is the drill. That's the mechanism for delivering an acceptance and celebration of difference. So I think that would be great if
And
we managed to do that.
sorry to interrupt you, Mark, but do you think kind of like cultural and age differences, cultural age differences also have an impact on what we can achieve and how far we can go? Because I think we've been like, there's been a few groups that have been politicized or, not always welcomed. Some people are a bit older, they don't always get it. Do you think that has an impact on what we can achieve at the moment and how far we can go with this?
It does, but rather like the digital divide,
Yeah.
digital natives and digital immigrants, people, for example, I didn't have computers in school, so I was self-taught when it
Yeah.
came to computers. People 10, 20 years older than me didn't have that luxury, so they feel excluded in that respect. And so much is happening digitally now. But yeah, there are, and I think the same thing will happen with a respect for difference and doing the right thing. I spoke to somebody recently and we were talking about immigration policy and our instinctive either openness or reluctance. And somebody said, people arguing about who owns what plot of land is like fleas arguing about who owns the dog. It's and then there are some interesting stories. And this hit home for somebody who was, by their own admission, quite prejudicial about the topics of immigration and the extent to which, as a nation, the UK should be supporting people and being open. And we are very much more open than many other countries. But if we hadn't welcomed Freddie Mercury's family into the UK when we did, we would not have Bohemian Rhapsody.
Exactly that. Exactly that. Was a great example. Thank you for saying that. And kind of, do you think being in the music industry affects, well, not just the music industry, arts and culture, affects people's mental health with a lot of this competition and a lot of people trying to make it? And I think you can be quite isolated at times, like you said. Is this part of the reason why you form this network, is to bring those people together to make it easy to collaborate and communicate and just make people feel part of something, that belonging, like you said before?
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's competitive in the terms of career progression and success.
Mm.
It's very difficult to compare two paintings or even a violin piece with an art gallery.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, it is difficult, and it's interesting. Pharrell Williams posted an article shortly after the last Olympics saying that we should have a cultural Olympiad. And then until 1948, we did have a parallel Olympics for culture. But then, of course, how do you compare? You know, what do you measure? So I'd be up for a festival of culture that is aligned with the Olympics every 4 years. For it not to be competitive, for it to be a celebration of the culture of that country and visiting countries.
Brilliant. What a great idea. And I love Pharrell Williams. Shout out to Pharrell. I was going to say, Mark, if people want to find out more about the Arts and Culture Network, they want to get in touch, they want to join your groups, where could they find you and how can they connect with you?
The easiest thing to do is to search for Arts and Culture Network on Google. We're at artsandculturenetwork.com. If we're mainly on LinkedIn, so if you search for Arts and Culture Network on LinkedIn, you'll find it. You won't be able to miss us. So yeah, Arts and Culture Network as a search, we'll find everything about us. There's a join page on our website. It's entirely optional, but that's how we're funded. No advertisers or sponsors, so that we can remain independent. And yeah, and every little helps, as they say, because when those small amounts per month come together, they can make a big impact somewhere. And that's what we're determined to do by the end of the decade, is to create that support foundation.
Well done. Well done. Honestly inspirational to so many and supportive to so many too. Do you want to share any major wins or successes with us before we go? Got another 5 minutes.
Ooh, major wins and successes. Oh, that's really, I guess 143,000 without a marketing budget.
Wow.
Is probably, you know, that's, I mean, we're very lucky because we have so many people applying to join the group every day, and that's exponential.
Yeah.
In terms of the LinkedIn group. Yeah, that and playing the triangle at Carnegie Hall.
Oh, cool. That's an odd one. I've never heard that one before, but well done you. Yeah, we're going to leave it there and thank you ever so much, Mark. I know you've got another networking session soon, so I'm going to give you a bit more time to get to that next. And I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and all the work you do. So thank you ever so much and keep it up.
Thank you, Saskia. Those were great questions. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
You know when it's posted. Thank you. Bye, Mark.
Bye.